Hey y'all, so this is going to be an upload today instead of a live video. I much prefer live videos. I prefer talking to you guys face to face. But here in Costa Rica, it is high season with papagayo winds, and they've been very intense this year, and it's given me some not too much fun times on the internet because the internet breaks up and does different things. I was afraid this might be because I was talking to my mother earlier on the phone and it kept breaking up. That's never a good thing. So, I want to talk a little bit today about, I'm just going to call them problematic people that are in your life and how to deal with them. But mostly, I want to illustrate that from dealing with some problem people online. Okay, if you don't know who I am, I'm Suzanne Tidkebauer. I used to write a column called No Longer Quivering for over 10 years about Quiverful, about evangelicalism, and the weirder branches of Christianity. I have an upcoming book called With Strange Fire. You can read more about that at withstrangefire.com, my website. Okay, so if you could do the YouTube things, hit like, subscribe, that would be awesome. These are just my opinions, okay? Don't bully anybody that I'm going to talk about here. Not Kareem, not anybody. Don't even send Jodi Arias a nasty note. Okay, so this morning I got up, doing my thing, doing my little internet thing where I'm looking all over at the stuff that I like. And I saw a video about Jodi Arias. You know who she is. She murdered her boyfriend, or ex-boyfriend, Travis. I think the last name was Story. I didn't pay much attention to the trial when it was ongoing beyond just the headlines. But later, sorry, I'm suddenly running nose. Later, I saw some things about her and think, oh, this is interesting. I got to read about this. So I read a couple of books about the whole situation, the trial and everything, and thought this is a crazy story. But boy, this is a story that illustrates what happens when you have a narcissist in the family, which that's my opinion of what she has. That she's narcissistic, could be, could not be, I don't know. That's just my dime store opinion on this. So I was watching this video that popped up on Grunge about her that was put up this morning, okay? And thinking, well, this is pretty weird. I busted out laughing after watching it for a while because somebody we all know and know pretty well, Kareem Lefty, came out of left field in this thing. And there he was. They had shots of him. I mean, his Dr. Phil appearance where he was defending Jodi. They had shots of his song that he sang about Jodi Arias, about how wonderful she was. They had clips from his phone call with her, his video call where he had recorded it, and it ended up on one of the tabloid newspapers. Well, websites, not newspapers anymore, but one of the tabloids. And it was kind of funny because about the first, I think from like minute two to like almost minute five was a whole lot of Lefty. So Kareem, or as my husband, I'll say Kareem, and I'll say cream of wheat, cream of this, cream of that, cream of the crop. I'm not going to say Kareem's last name because it's all over the internet. And you guys all know him as Real Entertainment News. Now, I always kind of liked the guy. I still kind of do. But I realized I had to have not much more to do with him once he started fighting with Road Hog. So I quit going into his live streams. I quit going on panel with him, all of that. And when he was on Aaron's channel, I wouldn't even go watch. Why? Because when he and Road Hog started the clash of the Titans, they started hurling personal insults and threats at each other. And I was just noping out of it. But the main reason I did it was because he said some really nasty threats and things towards Road Hog's wife, Mrs. Road Hog. And I am never down with people threatening the spouses of others. It's one thing if you're going to fight with somebody and call them a doo-doo head or whatever it is that floats your boat. That's one thing. especially if you know you're all grown ass adults. That's one thing, and we are all kind of off to the side watching with popcorn and delicious iced diet coke. That's one thing. And sometimes it's fun to watch this stuff. But for me, what I've realized is I can only watch a little bit of it and then I have to back away because if it's too toxic, it starts to impact my own mental health. So that's why I had to draw my little line in the sand and say, no more Lefty. Lefty, go back in the left field because I can't handle the yelling and the insults any longer. And I don't wish him harm. Actually, I wish the best for him. I wish that he is successful in whatever field he's trying to take on next. And as y'all well know, I've forgiven Road Hog for his words against me at one time. Hey, people fight. They say crazy things they don't mean. They say all kinds of stuff. And it's best just to breathe in, breathe out, move on, and keep short offense lists and accept apologies from others. Now, what was funny to me about when Road Hog apologized to me is there was a whole couple of mean girls that did not like the fact that I accepted apology. And the funny thing I have to say about that is you really can't dictate who accepts whose apology. And I'm not a big fan of this pylon stuff. But in the last couple days, I've seen some really crazy stuff going on. And I mean crazier than Michelle's Sabata and her ban evading, which she's doing quite cleverly. I've learned something from her. If you're going to ban evade from YouTube after they've banned you, do a live stream and then delete it. Some reason they're not taking action. I guess they think she's not actually doing anything. So Michelle is kind of amusing for me to watch because we're from the same part of the world. We both have similar educations. But we did like this. And she's got that awful New Orleans accent that sounds almost like it's from up north. At first, she fooled me into thinking she was from Yankee Land. I forgot that some people in New Orleans have that accent. And like we were saying the other day, I read a book recently on Hurricane Katrina and Charity Hospital, and they brought up the fact that New Orleans drinking is a thing. It's a hardcore thing. So some of what you're seeing with her is just her acting out her culture, and that's hard to watch sometimes too. But it does give me kind of a laugh and a kick that she's managing to ban evade. She's figuring out ways to do that. So between her, this thing coming out of left field about Lefty, and other things that have come out this week, I was thinking earlier, it's like, are we at full moon yet? But I had to take a look. Full moon doesn't happen until March the 7th. So I'm going to put a prediction. We're going to see crazier and crazier behavior um, the usual bunch of merry lunatics that we all know. I had to laugh this morning. I got up and everybody was talking on Twitter about Erica. And if you don't know who Erica is, Erica Genevieve is that one of many names she goes by. She also was going by Mrs. Cartman Crane, Mrs. Petty Crane. She's got a whole pile of names. She's another one that popped up during a KJ lawsuit and against Molly Golightly, and all sorts of crazy stuff has come from her. But what's interesting about her is that she keeps inserting herself into communities, getting the attention of people who I know are okay, going on their live streams, talking a lot, and then eventually everybody's cluing that person in and saying, hey, don't deal with her. She's a TROLL. So she has popped up again. I'm watching her and I'm watching everybody coming up with new sock puppets that she's doing. So I want to warn you to be careful of her out there. She is way up there with some unusual activity. So that's really not the main thing I wanted to talk about. I wanted to talk about what do you do when these people popping up in your lives and you are well in your life, not your lives, not your live streams, but in your life, and you're looking at them with askance and saying, get away from me. You're going to impact my mood. So get away, get away, get away now. One of the things that I've started doing, and especially in the last year, but really the last 2 years, judicious use of the ban hammer online. I just block people or I put mute because I don't want to see all that. You want to fight and create drama? Okay. But you're going to have to do that over there away from me because I'm really not interested in that. Now, I admit sometimes I lose my mind. Like the other day, I lost my mind because I was having all these people swarming me out of nowhere. Only one I knew asking me a bunch of questions about Katie Joy and myself. And I think I answered those. And I decided in the aftermath of the other day that one of the things that I'm going to be doing is whenever people pop up to question me about Catherine and my time with her, I'm just going to refer them back to the frequently asked questions that I have posted on my YouTube channel. And I'm going to keep growing that. As more and more crazy questions come up, I'm going to keep just answering them. And I'm not going to talk about her anymore as far as answering any more damn questions or letting anybody get me agitated. Now, I still will talk about her legal documents when they drop and some interesting things like that, but none of this breathless day-to-day stuff on her. It's just too wearing on the psyche. And I've gotten to the point where I'm in such a my eyes glaze over now when I see anybody talking about her on Twitter or whatever. My eyes just glaze over, and I'm like, okay, no, 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 no. So unless something big happens, this is it. So we've covered the online stuff. You have control over who contacts you and who does not, and who you answer or not. Just because somebody decides to contact you does not mean that you owe them an answer in any way, shape, or form. When I started talking about John MacArthur a couple of weeks ago, as far as with Ginger Duggar's Volo's new book, Becoming Free Indeed, I had a pile of hardcore Christians pile in. This just made me laugh because they're all telling me, I will pray that God brings you peace instead of your sadness and your disbelief. And I'm like, who are you to say that I do not believe in God? I've never stated that anywhere. Not liking the theology of somebody is way different than being an atheist, okay? And I have lots of friends in the atheist community who are far more welcoming and nice than most Christians I know. So when that happens, I just move those people to Jerks for Jesus and roll on. That's it for the online ones. But what happens when it's real life and you're having to deal with people that are just yanking your chain? You all got to see me go through that with the situation with my mother and with having to go to Louisiana. When the ants from the ant heap were insisting that I come over and deal with it. Here's the thing. I told them before I went that my mother has free will to do as she pleases, even though I think she'd be better off in a retirement community, that it's strictly up to her if she chooses to do that or not. That is her choice. None of us are going to be able to prove that she needs legally that she needs to be there. So why even go there with it? Just mention it once or twice and breathe in, breathe out, move on. Everybody has free will. And I know there are a lot of Christians out there that say there's no such thing as free will, that everything is predestined by God. I don't buy that because it talks about free will a number of times. Oh. So the ants were really making me anxious there for a while. And I know they meant well. They didn't mean any harm in what they were doing. But I learned something through the entire experience. I learned I have to put in place with them, with my mother, certain boundaries for me to function effectively. That if I don't, I can get really triggered into depression, which I had, probably 6 or 8 weeks of it leading up to and coming back from my little adventure in Louisiana. So again, it's boundaries. And it may not be the same boundaries as with strangers online when you'll say blockity block, 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 click. It's more difficult and it's more the careful minuet where you don't allow them to contact you willy-nilly or you don't respond to everything. Or you look at stuff and say, yeah, that person is a lunatic. I'm not going to go there with them. And just breathe in, breathe out, move on. And that's with families, but with friends, it can really take some really odd shapes and go different places. There are people I'm dealing with here that my druthers would be not to deal with them at all. But unfortunately, it's not as easy as hitting blockety block block when you have people who are irking you in your real life. But boundaries are still important to put in. I put up a couple of boundaries with some of the people here that I've had some issues with because it's important for me to maintain my mental health. So I try to stick to a certain schedule of doing things. Routine actually helps if you're trying to make yourself not freak out over whatever, not take in different things. And I think one of the most helpful techniques that I've learned in the last couple of years is look at the person. Do you know them to be a factual font of wisdom, or are they just some silly person running around making it up as they go along? If it's some silly person and they're doing stuff you know is absolutely wrong, you can just say, yeah, that's just them. I'm not even going to take offense at that because it won't do any good. It won't change them. Nothing I do is going to be able to change them. So I'm going to kind of treat them with kid gloves from a distance and say, okay, breathe in, breathe out, move on. I talked about somebody that has been just overly involved. They try to be overly involved in everything we do, and I've had to just go gray rock with that person, and I still am gray rocking them. That is another very useful technique. Example: the other day, the person was questioning me about where I was going because I had said, "Look, you got to come at this time or that time. Can't come any later." They came later and we were scrambling to get out the door. And I was talking to the person and they're saying, well, where you got to go? I said, out with friends. Who? I don't think you'd know them. Where y'all going? Oh, well, we're going to a private party. I mean, just very gray rock quest answers. You don't owe anybody any explanations or any answers, not real life, not online. If you don't feel like sharing that information, you don't have to share that information. You can say, I'm sorry, but that's really none of your business. Or you can say it in a more polite way. You can say, very minor things like out with friends. You don't have to give everybody every detail of your life. And for me, that was a big one. I've talked about how I grew up in a dysfunctional family where there were no boundaries. There weren't boundaries, and there wasn't any thought of boundaries. Um, and that's really screwed me up in some ways. One of the ways that I only recently realized that my family of origin has set me up, that I was thinking about right before I took my trip to Louisiana, and it was something that I've gotten really angry at my husband about. It's stupid. It's stupid in retrospect. It's very stupid. But I fall right in that trap. But now I'm starting to realize that I'm doing this. And I know that if I'm not feeling well, if I'm tired, I have the tendency to do this. And that is my mother inculcated in me the idea that I would never, ever, ever, ever inconvenience anyone. That there were just some things that you do that people do that are just so incredibly rude that you would not do that. And I've had to re-examine what those things are because I found myself many times just getting out of the box crazy angry over stupid things. Example, pulling into the Maxi Pali parking lot and seeing that some stupid gringo has parked their car, their Toyota Highlander with all the accessories, that is a gas guzzler, right in the parking spot marked electric vehicles only. And just being incredibly outraged by that and wanting to tell that person off. I started thinking about that because my husband and I were both raised very differently. He was not raised with that. I was raised with that. You don't inconvenience anybody, and people who do are horribly rude. Guess what? People that don't stick by that, they're not horribly rude, not all the time. The Toyota driver was, because he deliberately parked in a spot for electric vehicles. But I had to realize I'm not queen of the universe. I can't walk up to somebody and say, "You parked an electric vehicle slot. You are going to hell." I can't do that. That's really none of my business. If the Maxi Police security guard did not run him off, then it's really none of my business at that point. That's been a hard one for me to accept. And I started thinking about this a lot in the last year because almost a year ago we had visiting relatives and we were eating at Eat at Joe's one day, which is a restaurant connected to Witches Rock at Tamarindo Beach. Eat at Joe's ladies' room is extremely tiny, okay? And I was in there, had gone to the restroom, was washing my hands, the little sink they have there. The door opens. There's almost no room to navigate at all, even if you're a skinny mini, which I am not. And this lady came out of the other stall, and I'm, of course, blocking the hand washing thing because there's only room for one person at the sink. And I turned to her and I said, "Don't worry, I'll be out of your way in just 1 second." She went off on me. It was the craziest thing. It's just ranting about, "Never apologize for taking up space, never apologize for having needs, never apologize." And I was like, what? Because, the whole thing with, "Hey, I'll get here in a second," is just the way I was raised with my mother. You don't inconvenience anybody ever. It was me acknowledging her and trying to be nice about it. So I've had to do a lot of thinking about that and thinking about my attitudes on not inconveniencing anyone. So I'm a work in progress, just like everybody else in this world. And I laugh sometimes and say it took me till 62 years old to realize some of these things and start making a change. One of the negatives that this trip brought up for me was I started having memories of my childhood that I had totally forgotten about many years ago. And they're not all good. They weren't all good. I remember the time my father tried to kill us all by running the car into the lake at LSU. The lake's probably 2 foot deep, so it was a very unsuccessful attempt. And I started looking at that for the first time as an adult, going, family annihilator, attempted family annihilation. I told a story the other day, I think, about my bike that I wanted and I got, and there was no way that I could ride it because it was too big for me. And instead of putting it aside until I was older, my parents forced me to ride it every single day with them down at the school basketball courts, and it was a disaster. I kept falling off because if you can't put your feet on the ground, there's no way you're going to be able to ride that bike. And I started looking at that in the terms of having raised my own children, having, tried to do love and logic, have discipline that actually fits the crime instead of hurting someone. The point of discipline is not to hurt your child, it is to get your child to see the consequences and to change their behaviors. You're trying to form a fully functional human being that can navigate without problems in an adult world. I think a lot of times, especially in religious communities, they forget that and they want the smiling robot that always says, "Yes, ma'am, no, ma'am." When that's not what you want. You want to improve the person. So, still dealing with the recovered memories. I probably will be dealing with them for some time more. And it's weird what your mind will put on a shelf and then later it'll reveal. So I just want to encourage you today, have good boundaries. Don't let anybody cross those boundaries. And if you're having a moment, you're having recovered memories, or you're just having a bad day, you're having a full moon episode or whatever, be kind to yourself. That really is about the only thing we can do when those things happen, is to be kind to yourself. And not everybody that makes you think about things is totally wrong. The lady at the bathroom at Idiot Joe's was not wrong. She had a good point. It was just her presentation of it was not very good. She went off into the ranty feminist land. And I consider myself a feminist. I was kind of like, whoa. But you can't control anybody else. You can just control yourself. I love you guys. Thank you for watching. I hope to be back live soon whenever the stupid Papagayo wins. Let me have internet again.